actually the 6th webinar that we are organizing, and we are more than happy to see that you continue to be with us in big numbers. My name is Nikos Panagiotou. For those of you that you don't know me, I'm an associate professor at the School of Journalism at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and also I'm in charge of Digital Communication Network Southeast Europe Hub, which is headquartered in Thessaloniki. The webinar is arranged jointly by our hub and World Learning Digital Communication Network also, which is a coalition of digital influencers for improving the information space. And it is supported by the US Department of State, Office of Citizens Exchanges. We are more than happy, and I would like to thank our speakers today for joining us. And before passing the floor to them, I would like actually to introduce them. They actually represent fact-checking organizations from all over the world. And this is why we are more than happy to have them, because today's webinar managed to attract and wants to combine different experience regarding a very important issue, that of fact-checking in a time of a pandemic. And we want actually to share their experiences with us, to find the common things that exist all around the globe. Actually, up to my knowledge, it is the first of its kind of a webinar that managed to have this kind of representation. We are more than happy for helping us doing that, and special thanks to Aaron, that is our first speaker actually, and Vlad. So Vladimir Spersen from World Learning. So as I told you, today our speakers are the following: Aaron Sarokman, which is Executive Director from PolitiFact, from St. Petersburg, Florida, not the other St. Petersburg. Jancy Jacob, which is a Managing Director at Boom, a fact-checking organization that is based at Mumbai. Chris Tartaguila, which is an Associate Director of International Fact-Checking Network based in St. Petersburg, again in Florida. Also, we have Dr. Mercy Koril, which is a medical journalist and a fact-checker also from that represents the Standard Media Group from Nairobi. We also have Chico Mares, which is a reporter from Asia Lupe from Rio de Janeiro. And we have with us Clara Jimenez Cruz, which is from Spain, from also a very important organization that is dealing with fact-checking, and Billion Lee from Taipei. As I told you before, it is our panel today represents all these organizations, and Anna Pellegrata, that comes from Digital Forensic Lab, which is from Atlantic Council. Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for being here with us, and especially to our speaker, that they were eager to share their knowledge and be involved in this discussion. Just to give you an overview of today's structure, we will actually let our speakers present, and then we will take your questions. As you know from the other webinars, you can you can raise your questions into the chat room that it is available in the Zoom special section. So I will pass the floor now to Aaron. Aaron, thank you once again for helping us building up this wonderful actually panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for attending, and hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Yes, I'm Aaron Sharakman. I'm the Executive Director of PolitiFact. I've been with PolitiFact since 2010, and for many of you who might know what we do, most of what we have done in our history has been political fact-checking. And this is an amazing and very different time for us. Our team of 15 full-time fact-checkers has essentially shifted all of our priorities to fact-check claims related to the pandemic and COVID-19 almost entirely. And that has been very interesting. I think you're going to hear a lot today about how misinformation spread as the virus spread out of China. I think a lot of it started with fake cures. It then there was also a lot of or fake remedies. I think we saw a lot of stories about the origin of the virus. This is now, again, obviously something we're very interested in. For us, I want to spend my little time with you focusing on how this health crisis in the United States has become very much a political discussion. The United States, wrongly or rightly, I think in the 2016 election, became an epicenter of what many people termed fake news, right? And the election of Donald Trump and the spread of misinformation online leading up to that election. The world perspective, of course, is that there are many instances of this before 2016, but people focused on ours. What I can tell you and what I can see is that we are very much in the middle of another political misinformation crisis heading into our 2020 election. And that the lessons of 2016 or the examples of 2016 are repeating themselves. The difference is that most of the misinformation now is laser focused on the pandemic and COVID-19, unfortunately. We are seeing strong and repetitive instances of misinformation, disinformation, supporting narratives that help President Trump or his response to the crisis. And you're also seeing armies of trolls or posters on social media amplifying messages that are either unproven or downright wrong. In our country, the leading health official is a guy named Dr. Anthony Fauci. Many of you may have seen him on television. He has not been critical of the president, but he is presenting straight facts about the pandemic that sometimes fly in the face or are contradictory to what President Trump is saying. That has made him, of recent, a target. There was a story this week claiming falsely that Dr. Anthony Fauci stands to lose $100 million, for instance, if hydrochloroquine is a remedy or treatment for the virus. And the point there is he has been critical of saying we do not know if that drug is effective in the treatment of COVID-19. Again, that flies in the face of what Donald Trump himself has suggested that this is a very possible, likely, strong cure. And so Dr. Fauci has become a target of misinformation. Democratic governors. So in the United States, as many of you probably know, states have incredible powers that sometimes are more strong than the federal government. And in public health crises, that is often the case. And so Democratic governors across this country are taking more aggressive action when it comes to social distancing, mitigation efforts, and they are being encountered with large amounts of pushback, both from the president and then being supported online by people posting misinformation. There's an example of the governor of Michigan, a woman named Gretchen Whitmer, who has seen a host of stories saying and promoting falsehoods against what she's done, including banning the use of the American flag, including banning gardening, and other kind of either mundane or normal activities. I was hopeful. In the early days of this crisis, I was hopeful because I believed that people were rallying around the idea that we will let the science speak for itself. And fact-checking would be seen as neutral and nonpartisan. and that we could have a real impact in what we're doing in stopping the spread of misinformation. Unfortunately, I think here, as we've gone longer into this crisis, and we will go longer into this crisis, we are now seeing it spin or turn into the same political food fight that we saw both in 2016 and every election here in the United States since that. I'll close with one piece here. Many of the fact checkers on this call are part of Facebook's third-party fact-checking program, which seeks to reduce the spread of misinformation online through Facebook. And I just want to call out, and I'll drop a link in the chat after we're done. Facebook posted some update about that work today. This is not an update that I don't think any of the fact checkers had seen, but I want to call out one stat that they reported. I can't verify its veracity, but I think it is interesting. They report that during the month of March, Facebook displayed warnings on about 40 million posts related to COVID-19. That's based on around 4,000 fact checks written by fact checkers like PolitiFact, but also fact checkers all around the world. What's really interesting to me is that when people saw those warning labels, 95% of the time, they did not go on to view the original content. If true, that is an interesting number and a sign of the effectiveness, at least of that program. Again, though I do worry as this crisis lingers on, it becomes less about health and more about politics. I'll be available in the chat if anyone has any questions, and I'll be participating later. So I look forward to spending some more time with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for your thoughtful comments and your presentation. I would just like to state here that whatever views are being expressed here does not represent either DCN, C-Hub, or World Learning. It's totally of our speakers' personal perspectives on the issue that we highly value. Now we will move on to our next speaker. And Chico, the floor is yours. Chico Mares comes from Rio de Janeiro, just to go over from Florida to Rio de Janeiro.
Hi, my name is Chico Mares. I work for Agência Lupa in Brazil. First of all, I'd like to say that the situation in Brazil is bizarrely similar to the one that Aaron just described about the United States. We're still like, the situation is not as grave as in the United States here, but still this misinformation crisis became more about political misinformation than the COVID itself. But that doesn't mean that it does not affect, and that's the policies that have been taken against COVID-19. So that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, just a few numbers about COVID-19 here in Brazil. We had 28,000 total confirmed cases and 1.7 thousand dead. I mean, it's still not as grave as in Italy or Spain or the United States, but the situation is getting worse. So it is like already pretty serious. As many of you might already know, our president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been really in denial about the whole severity of the crisis. He said, he even got as far to say that COVID-19 is just little flu. But on the other hand, our governors, they do have strong powers, and they have decided to adopt social isolation measures from mid-March onwards. And since then, a lot of the misinformation that's going around has been to discredit this social isolation measures, this mitigation efforts that have been taken by state governments and some municipal governments. I'm going to just say a few of those misinformation ways that we've been seeing. Last week, we had like lots of forged videos that were made in hospitals. People, they would go to hospitals, film themselves, say that the hospital was empty, but they just went to a part of the hospital, thought that it was actually empty for whatever reason. There's been many people making false claims that some deaths that are not COVID-19 have been reported as COVID-19. And also there was even a case of a House representative who happens to be a doctor who went as far as saying that lockdown caused the epidemic in Italy, and he had numbers to prove. So, I mean, it's really crazy how but these things are circulating a lot on social media, and it's having a real effect. So the beginning of the crisis, people were taking like very seriously the whole instructions from the authorities. They were staying home. They were being super careful. But with this immense amount of misinformation, what we can see that this whole confidence of the population is eroding. People are starting to leave their houses. They're starting to make parties. They're starting to break curfew, whatever. We have Google mobility reports. They already show an upward trend in the number of people that are using their mobile devices on workplaces, transit stations, and the like. So the thing is, this wave of false information is having a real effect on people, and worst of it is actually affecting local government policies as well. Although some governors have been very strict and they are not bending down to this whole, some are not. Some are rolling back on their social distancing policies. Yesterday, the mayor from my hometown, Curitiba, he announced that all the ordinary commerce is going to be reopened. I mean, we're in the middle of the crisis, and people, some mayors and even some governors are announcing that things are going back to normal, like right now. So, I mean, it's a really worrying situation. So, to wrap this up, I would like to talk about what we've been doing to try to fight this misinformation here at Lupa. First of all, we put like COVID-19 as our number one, number two, and number three priority for our daily work. We've been doing basically that. Like that's it. Like we're checking COVID-19 right now. That's what we do until this crisis is over. We're trying to debunk as many claims as we possibly can, and our production nearly doubled over the last few weeks. So it's been like a lot of hard work, and we're really proud of a lot of good work. Also, since there are a lot of waves of misinformation about specific subjects, such as the hospitals I mentioned, or chloroquine, or vaccines, or cures, we're also working on explainers rather than just regular fact checks. But the most important part of all is that we started to develop a few new projects. Just yesterday, we launched a new project which we're going to try to translate to a more friendly language some of the most recent developments in scientific research regarding COVID-19. We aim to publish 3 articles every week, and this is a partnership with Google. We also launched a few weeks back 2 newsletters, both focused exclusively on COVID-19 misinformation. One of them, one is aimed to the general public, and we talk about what we've debunked, what's been debunked around the world, and this sort of thing. The other one, which is very interesting as well, is aimed to health institutions. We're sending them to like health administrations, hospitals, medical associations, and the idea is to give them an overview of what sort of misinformation is going around so that they can act on it as well. These 2 projects are partnerships with Facebook. Sorry. And finally, we're working on a fact-check database from Spanish and Portuguese language fact-checking initiatives. That's based on the international database that Chris is probably going to tell you about more later on. This work is actually being spearheaded by Checado in Argentina, but we're partnering with them to translate it to Portuguese and to include some what's been checked by fact checkers from Brazil and Portugal. And I believe this will be a very useful tool for fact checkers and for researchers. Well, I guess that's it. And thank you very much for the invitation. It's been an honor to speak to you about our work.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and also for sharing your work, which is really impressive, and your efforts in an area that there's a long discussion about how the political system and in general is responding and reacting to a great challenge. Now we will move to our next speaker. We will actually go from Rio de Janeiro to Mumbai, and it is Jancy Jacob, the next speaker, that represents Boom, that it is an independent digital journalism initiative. Jancy, the floor is yours, and the world, of course.
Thank you. My name is Jancy Jacob, and I'm the managing editor of Boom, which is one of the India's first fact-checking initiative. We have also during this pandemic, we've launched in 2 other countries, in neighboring countries in Myanmar and Bangladesh. So Now we are present in 3 countries and in 5 different languages. As far as India is concerned, we now have about 12,700 cases and about 420 deaths that have already taken place. In fact, our experience has been that because by the time actually the cases started pouring into India, we already saw what was happening in Italy and Europe and several other countries. And the state governments and the center both acted quite swiftly, I would say, in ensuring that there is total lockdown. So we've been in lockdown since the last 2.5, 3 weeks. And in fact, at Boom, we decided to go into work from home mode even a week before that because we realized that it's going to be tough. So we had started our preparations quite early. I'd just like to break what I'm going to present into few categories that I would like to talk about. So I don't have a presentation, so I thought I'll just show you this sheet of paper. I don't know whether it's visible, but what I'm trying to show here is that we did about 120 stories over the last 10 weeks. And what's very interesting, if you can see see the numbers, and this has been a surprise to me. In fact, I also started crunching these numbers only today. What we found is that between global stories and China, so how I'm categorizing this is all the fakery that is going around about whether it's about any video image related to Italy. In fact, we had a lot of stories about Italy, or about the fact that the Russian President Putin has released about 500 lions onto the streets of Russia to actually control the people and not allow them to come out on the streets. And that was quite one of the very bizarre stories that we had fact checked. If you look at all these stories, both global and China, that global is about 22 and China would be about 10. This would comprise of about 25% of the total fact checks that we have done. So this was just to give you an overview. Apart from this lockdown, fake cures, communal, I'll come to communal part, conspiracy, general corona stories, and political and national pride. A lot of national pride stories are also, for the fact that India is not impacted that much and the government acted quite swiftly and all of that. So these are the broad categories that we've been working on. As have been seen in other countries, the initial phase, we started fact checking somewhere around the last week of January. The initial 2.5 weeks were all related to fake cures, whether vaccines are being found, whether the Indian diet is actually going to help the citizens in not contracting the virus, how we had a better immune system, how various the health systems that are prevailing in India would actually help you fighting the virus. So these were some of the broad categories of stories that we saw. And there are a lot of misinformation around lockdown procedures, about measures being taken by the cops. And India is not one state, right? It's a continent in itself, actually. And there are so many official languages, so many different cultures. So the diversity of it was adding to its own problems as well. So broadly, that is what we've seen. Apart from this, what has been very visible over the last 2.5 weeks, I would say, and I'm not sure whether this is the experience in other countries as well. It is not visible to me, but as far as India is concerned, we've seen that this crisis has seen a curve of all the stories related to health and cure and lockdown and all of those general topics that we would see in other countries. And then we've gone back, as far as the misinformation is concerned, going back to the communal lines, about the Hindu-Muslim fault lines that are being exploited by political parties, their IT cells, and people who are basically trying to vilify a certain community. Now, this has become much more visible over the last couple of weeks that we've seen. So though while communal stories are only 14 out of the 120 stories that we've seen, these 14 stories have come after we did 75 stories which were related to all other categories, and these have all come in the last 2 weeks. So again, that's the biggest worry that fact checkers have here in India, that a certain community is being targeted, being blamed for their religious practices, owing to one of the cases that have happened, and the fact that they are super spreaders in terms of they have gone out and spread the virus among different parts of the country. Now that's the biggest worry. Also, a lot of videos have gone viral where unrelated videos where they say that, people from the Muslim community, they are spitting into your food. They, be very careful. In fact, today we have seen, over the last couple of days, we've seen that housing societies, because of the rumors that you have seen, they are preventing vendors from the community to enter their housing society, saying that we don't trust them, we are not going to buy fruits and vegetables from them. Now these are quite worrying trends that we are seeing, and in fact, our team is actually working overtime to bust many of those rumors and the fake narratives that are being built. So broadly, those are the categories of stories that we have seen. Apart from this, what we've been doing at Boom, not just tech stories, we've been doing a daily newsletter every day to about 3,500 odd subscribers who have come and joined us because they want to know. They're sitting at home, they're extremely worried. They really want to know what's happening. So we are doing a daily newsletter which goes out at least twice a day, morning and evening. Apart from that, we're doing daily videos. We are speaking to doctors, we're speaking to people, researchers, we're speaking to scientists, and we are basically trying to do it in a very easy explanatory form so that people can understand and go beyond just the news of what's happening, people are dying here and all of that. But apart from that, what should you do in certain cases? How should you approach if you suspect that you are positive? Now these are some of the explanatory videos that we are doing. And apart from that, we are also doing a live blog which is updating what is happening in the sphere of the fight against corona, and basically updating it on a daily basis. So broadly, these are the measures we have taken over the last 3 weeks. As I'm sure is the experience everywhere, we've only been doing corona stories. I think 99% of our coverage has only been related to the fight against corona. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jens. And it was Jens, it was very important, your thoughts, and it was very good that we actually had an outlook of how the things are evolving in India, a very important country, from every circumstance. Now I would like actually to move to our next speaker, which is Anna Pelegata from a Digital Forensic Lab from Atlantic Council. Anna, the floor is yours. Just before Anna, just a quick reminder to everyone, you can pose your questions to the chat. We have already received some questions, so please continue to do so. Anna, the floor is yours.
I'm trying to share the presentation. Can you all see it?
We can, yes.
Okay,
yes,
perfect. I will just try to move. Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. As Nikos mentioned, I work at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. As part of its mission, the DFR Lab is set to identify, expose, and explain disinformation using open source data, as well as analyze other hostile forms of manipulation and amplification of narratives. Of course, as other organizations that are joining this webinar, we recently refocused a great part of our research to cover narratives around coronavirus. And today we'll take just 5 minutes to show some of the examples of narratives that we identified targeting Europe specifically. So for our analysis, we use social media monitoring tools such as Meltwater, Batsumo, CrowdTangle, etc. That we use to measure how narratives spread online, what audiences they reach, as well as how much impact these narratives have. Of course, around in Europe, around COVID-19, we've seen all sorts of disinformation narratives. And again, in 5 minutes, I will show you only a few of the examples, but I hope that it will give you a sense of how widely disinformation spread during this health crisis in the continent. So the first category are narratives used for domestic political gain. These, of course, depend from country to country based on internal political debate. The example that you see in the slide comes from Italy, where immigration policies has been at the center of the political debate for years. And at the very beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, moderate and far-right political actors and media started spreading anti-immigrant sentiment, exploiting, again, the outbreak of COVID-19. So, for example, one of the narratives identified accused the Italian government of cutting public funds to national healthcare and spending the same funds for immigrants instead. So, of course, narratives like that are aimed to spike anti-narrative, anti-immigrant sentiment that is already existing in the country, but got worse using these narratives. The second category are conspiracy theories recycled across countries. So the most clear example is a rumor that started in Italy about helicopters spraying disinfectant to kill coronavirus. And this narrative reminds a little bit of the chemtrails conspiracy theories. The story was translated, was adapted to different countries, like the context of different countries, and it spread across 30 different countries in about 2 weeks. Then we have other examples, for example, of Ukrainian and Russian fringe media amplifying videos from Italian anti-vax conspiracy theorists, or another story generated in Russia that claimed that smoking decreases the probability of getting coronavirus that was then picked up in Ukraine. And other examples of how, again, stories originated in one country were translated and migrated from country to country. The third category is foreign propaganda. Everyone has been talking about how Russia and China, among all, are exploiting COVID-19 to expand influence in Europe. Evidence of this are, for example, the propaganda narratives that followed the medical aid against coronavirus that China and Russia sent to European countries like Italy. This kind of propaganda depicted China and Russia as saviors and unconditional supporters of Italy in this time of need. To spread these narratives, China used official government and state media accounts. For example, the account of the Chinese embassy in Rome was particularly active, but they also amplified pro-China hashtags through bots, which is an old-time technique used by Russia many times before. These kinds of pro-China and pro-Russia narratives, of course, as everyone can imagine, were weaponized to spread sentiments against the European Union, not only from Russia and China, but also from domestic actors as well. So in this case, all sort of narratives depicted the EU as not only as not helping its own countries most affected by coronavirus. So the EU didn't, like, all these narratives claim that the EU did not do anything to help these countries, but also it claims that the EU built obstacles for aid coming from China and Russia. So, for example, Russian sources at some point claimed that Poland did not allow the Russian cargo plane directed to Italy carrying the medical aid through its airspace. So it forced the Russian plane through a much longer trajectory. Or other narratives claim that the Czech Republic stole medical masks from Italy that were sent by China, and other similar stories. Other examples of anti-EU, anti-NATO, anti-US narratives include videos of one Italian replacing the EU flag with the Russian flag. The video gained a huge traction, not only in Italian social media, but also abroad. Other pro-Kremlin media outlets spreading conspiracy theories about US creating coronavirus as a bioweapon, or anti-NATO narratives claiming, for example, that the US troops will be a cause of spread of the virus in Europe. For example, bringing the virus from Italy to Latvia, like it shows in that article, and other similar stories. And then lastly, there are many other examples to include traditional pro-Kremlin disinformation targeting the Baltics and other countries in Europe, as well as networks of inauthentic accounts that spread COVID-19 disinformation. So again, these are only some of the examples that the GFR Lab identified in the past month or so, but happy to get into more details later on. That's it.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Just to jump over in some quick comments, to have in mind of what Anna suggested, please take into account that Italy has been hit severely from coronavirus. So you can imagine the impact of this kind of fake news and propaganda to the general population. And secondly, we have seen some of these elements even before, mainly against European Union. I mean, especially that fake news about Italians raising up the flag of Russia, and especially Russia. It has been played back again on during the economic crisis. So thank you, Anna, very much for your contribution. Now we will move on to Clara Jimenez. Clara comes from Madrid, and Spain also has been hit hard from coronavirus. Clara, thank you very much for being here with us in order to share your approach and experience. The floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
thank you for having me. Gonna share a very quick rough presentation that I did today. I wanted to start by saying that most of the things that I'm probably going to be talking about have to have a great relation with all of what all of us have seen. One of the things that we've realized throughout this crisis is that in most of the countries, the same misinformation is going around, but it gets there a bit later, depending on at which stage of the pandemic they are in each country. So we started to set up this special around coronavirus where we made a Q&A and debunked and fact-checked claims that we were seeing on the internet. We have fact-checked so far 430 claims, and we have answered 350 Q&As around the coronavirus crisis. And right now, currently, we are working with other organizations around Europe, trying to put the fact-check information forward once whatever misinformation reaches them, so that we're not duplicating that work. The other thing we've done, and this is something that Maldita usually does, is that we're trying new formats to reach the public in a different way. We are aware that there's a lot of people that are not going to read a fact check around science on our website, but they will read this comic-like information or receive a daily WhatsApp audio that they can consume quickly and understand what is happening. As I was saying, the situation in Spain has been very similar to what, for example, Aaron described at the beginning. We have seen a lot of claims around hypothetical cures or prevention advice that was wrong or false at the beginning of the crisis around a month ago for Spain. We've seen a lot of questions around lockdown, and we have been fact-checking that regularly. And what we've realized is that that was being valued somehow by the audience, because there was a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of questions that needed answers. What happened out of fact-checking that is that in Spain, which is a country with 47 million people, we went from receiving 250 daily queries on our WhatsApp number to receiving 2,000 a day. And we went from having 2 million unique users a month to having almost 10 only in March. This is the part of the work that we understand and that I think has had an impact throughout the crisis when we talk about sanitary and health issues. But as Aaron pointed out, the question and the situation is turning a lot more political in the last few days. And not only around political misinformation, but also in the case of Spain, it has become a way of targeting fact-checking in itself. This is a WhatsApp chain that started to circulate 5 days ago, claiming that the fact-checking agencies were controlling WhatsApp and they were censoring what you could and couldn't share on WhatsApp. Obviously, we're not. I think I don't need to clarify that. WhatsApp is an encrypted message app, and therefore we cannot know what anyone is sending and establish any kind of fact checking to that content. We don't censor. That's the other important part of knowing what fact checkers do. Why do I think this happened? Well, probably you've seen that there was a new announcement made by WhatsApp in which you cannot forward a message that has been sent 5 times beforehand to more than one person at a time. The communication for WhatsApp on that new measure was very poorly written, very, very poorly explained. WhatsApp decided to release on that same day an FAQ in which they recommended contacting fact checkers across the misinformation that they found on the platform, which was poorly understood by the public, and the polarization that already existed in Spain. I don't know if you know what our political situation is, but basically we have a very weak coalition government between the Socialist Party and the left-wing party within parliament. And then we have right-wing parties, which are pretty powerful because this coalition government has very little numbers. All this with the political misinformation being steered, we've seen that for the past 2 weeks, more or less, the misinformation we were seeing around coronavirus had much more to do with political issues than with health or prevention. Turn into, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, here. Turn into an MP in parliament saying yesterday that we are the Gestapo and that we have created a parastatal ministry of truth. And that's the point where we're in. We're being targeted day and night for the fact checking we've been doing, because what happened is that when the misinformation turned more political and we were debunking it and reaching a much higher audience than regularly, those who fabricated part of that political misinformation decided to start pointing at us. I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay, Clara, thank you very much for your sharing with us your organization work and especially what are the main concerns in Spain. Now we will move to the opposite, to Africa, and then we'll pass the floor to Dr. Mercy Korir, which is a medical journalist. She's from the fact-checking Standard Media Group from Nairobi. Dr. Korir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to bring in an African perspective on what is happening on the front of the coronavirus. As of now, Africa, we have recorded 17,583 deaths, no confirmed cases, sorry, with deaths being 917 of these confirmed numbers. The healthcare workers that have been affected in Africa, across the whole of Africa, 311. And I think it's important that we keep track of the healthcare workers that are being affected, because these are our frontline soldiers, we may call them that. And we've seen from what is happening in the global north that healthcare workers are not spared from this pandemic. So far, about 3,569 people have recovered from the virus. South Africa, Egypt have the highest numbers with 2,506, 2,505, more or less the same. And South Sudan, which was one of the last countries to confirm cases, have 4. Where I am in Kenya, as of this afternoon, we have 234 cases of confirmed cases. So as you can see, Africa is sort of in the lag and coming in after everyone else has had all the phases of this particular pandemic. And what we've seen, the same way that the pandemic started in the global north, we are now getting the same in Africa, and we are going through the same phases. And the same phases or waves that the pandemic has been facing, I would say, is the same waves that the information and the news cycle has been in the African continent. And the number of information, the news cycle, everything have been as diverse and as rich as the continent, as the countries in Africa, as the cultures in Africa. So we find certain similarities, only that it is modified depending on the particular African country or culture that we are talking about. So it has ranged from a place of uncertainty, where people are wondering, what is it that is happening in China? What is it that is happening in Europe? What is it that is happening in America? Then slowly, then it was back in Africa. And when people are asking what is it, is where we found that many of us as medics, whether you're actively in clinical practice or you're a journalist like myself, we are coming in handy, because now this was the time where people are asking what is happening, and now we need to start talking about the coronavirus. What is it? And I remember, like, one of the stories, one of the popular detergents, if I may call it like that, or disinfectants, sorry, Dettol, at the back of that disinfectant was that it fights coronavirus. And when people discovered that, then all of a sudden there was a rush to go and buy Dettol, the disinfectant, from off the shelves, because now it was evident that it had something to do against the coronavirus. And then now the second last wave of this information cycle has been on prevention. How do I prevent myself from getting this virus? Then it means that the next phase was, how do I prevent myself from getting severely ill from this virus? What do I do? Now, when there was a lot of issues about uncertainty, I found this particular one interesting, where, yes, this was from Nigeria, Punch magazine, where people were now telling people, and as you can see, we are quoting CDC, that you need to shave your beard if you have to be safe from the coronavirus. And we found that this, and what we saw in Africa is, when something picks up on one end of the African continent, then it spreads to the rest of the African continent, to the rest of the African countries. So I found that was a little bit interesting, because now it started from West Africa, and before we knew it, East Africa, Southern Africa, everyone now was talking about beards and what it has on, or rather what it does to the coronavirus, or its relation to the coronavirus. And obviously people had to come in, and Africa Check is one of those groups that were coming in to debunk some of these myths against coronavirus. Now, the other interesting thing that the African continent has had to grapple with was the issue of climate, where it was widespread before coronavirus made it to the global south, that, you know, the hot weather in Africa has something to do with the fact that not many people in Africa were being diagnosed or were getting coronavirus. That, you know, Africa was immune to the coronavirus, and this spread for a while. And we saw certain media houses coming in now to debunk some of these myths. And I think the best that I found was in Ethiopia, where they analyzed the issue of the tropical climate and what its relation to the coronavirus. The other one was that the African, or people of African descent, were immune to getting coronavirus. And that one now sort of gave many people in Africa and of African descent a solace that, you know, we are immune from this thing, we are not going to get this. But now when we started seeing certain people, and the most notable one was Idris Elba, when he came out and said, I've been diagnosed with the coronavirus, and we had some basketball players coming out and say we've been diagnosed, then it cascaded back to Africa, and people are now started being serious about the coronavirus, because now they could see people that they could identify with having contracted the coronavirus. The other one was on young people. I think the narrative that had gone round was that when you look at the global north, the population is mainly an aging or an elderly population. So compared to the African continent, where a big percentage of the population is young people, then the narrative that was going around was that Africa would be spared from the coronavirus because the African population is young, and therefore they would not suffer as much as the people in the global north. And this one actually took the intervention of WHO in one of their presses, where now they informed the public that, you know, young or old, everyone is invincible. Everyone is susceptible to getting coronavirus, and that now started getting people in Africa change the narratives, the stories that we are telling to more young people based. And if we look at, if I can give an example of Kenya, for example, more than 50% of the people who have been diagnosed with the coronavirus currently are actually young people from the age of 20 to about 39. That group is where our largest number of cases have been confirmed. And so this was sort of like evidence that, you know, as young people, you are still susceptible to the coronavirus. Now, most of the stories, the information and misinformation that we found, or that rather that I looked at across the continent, were mainly around cures. And I think once people got to understand the first wave of what is this coronavirus, how do I avoid getting it, then the next issue was, does it have a cure? How can I cure it? And we had so many things coming in, especially via WhatsApp, via Facebook, about proposed cures for the coronavirus. In South Africa, one of the most viral information was about immune boosters. Anything that boosts your immunity was said to prevent you or to cure the coronavirus. And what that translated to was that many people found their ways to pharmacies, to stores, to buy as many of these medicines as possible. The other one was about some herbal medications, garlic. In West Africa, they call it pepper soup, which is soup with pepper. And that was the narrative going around, that if you take some of these, either singly or in concoctions, then it would be a cure. The other one was about alcohol intake. So this one on alcohol intake, about alcohol taken in curing coronavirus, came from the sanitizers. Now, the use of hand sanitizers has not been a common practice in African continent, but now one of the recommendations, or one of the measures, was that people should use alcohol-based hand sanitizers. So because there was alcohol there, then some people assumed that, you know, if you take in alcohol also, it's going to kill the coronavirus. So that one really made a lot of rounds. And at one point, somebody from West Africa, again, made some short slides, some infographics, and spread them on Twitter, on WhatsApp, about some of these things. And actually they had branded them as UNICEF, about some of the cures. And it took a lot for us in media houses to reverse some of this information and the narratives. And in addition to taking in alcohol, there was also another advice that hot water taken in frequently, every so often, kills the virus, because it's in the mouth, the oropharynx, and so you'll not be able to get the coronavirus. Now, when it comes to treatment, there were two particular issues that we're even still grappling with it now. And this was on hydroxychloroquine being a cure, and use of ARVs. This is the lopinavir-ritonavir combination, the Kaletra, or Alluvia in some places. So this one started from the US. when Donald Trump mentioned that, hydroxychloroquine is promising and whatnot. And the first place that actually tried this out was in Nigeria. And we had cases of chloroquine poisoning in Lagos when now that information came in. And for me, this was an indication of how some of the narratives in the global north have a direct effect with what is happening in the global south. In Kenya and some of the East African countries, there's been a shortage of hydroxychloroquine because this is now an alternative, is medicine for people with lupus, for people with some rheumatological conditions. And so they've been actually, they've run short of these medications because people rush to buy them and stock them just in case they need them, in case they get the coronavirus. And the same thing to ARVs. We've had people asking for ARVs to get a prescription of ARVs so that they can keep them, so that in case they get the coronavirus, they can actually treat themselves with those ARVs. So I remember one of the questions that had been asked was, how do this misinformation, disinformation, and fake news play in the medical profession? And I think for me, the most direct one is the side effects of all of these cures that people take, either in excess, or the concoctions that people take, excess intake of alcohol. This directly go to the medical profession because they have to reverse the side effects of some of these things. They have to resuscitate people who are in dire straits after ingesting hydroxychloroquine. So it has had a direct effect on the medical profession, the clinicians, and how they are managing the situation. And the other thing is that we've seen, which is a good thing, I guess, that many places, many African countries are now calling in their medical professions to come out and explain a lot of these medical issues, a lot of the public health issues on the coronavirus, because of all the information. There's an overload of information that needs a trusted source to come and debunk, to come and to clarify to the people on what exactly they mean. There was an issue on
Dr. Correa, if you allow me, because we are running short of time, if you can actually conclude here in order to, because we have another two speakers. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No problem. It's actually my last point, which is on some traditional beliefs that have played a role on the narratives that are going around on the coronavirus. And here we've seen, I just had a short video on people cursing the virus. And I think probably I can share a link to this video later on, but I just had a short snippet of it on, this is in Kenya. This was done by one of my colleagues.
Here we meet gray-haired, half-dressed men performing the rituals to banish the coronavirus.
So that was my conclusion of the presentation. Basically, they're just chasing away the coronavirus using those traditional beliefs. And we've seen this happening also in other places where they are big on traditional beliefs.
Dr. Correa, thank you very much for your sharing with us your thoughts and actually your work. Just want to mention that this meme regarding with a beard, it has reached even Europe. I actually have seen it. It has been sent to me just before 2 days ago, so it spreads over the continents. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next speaker, Billion Lee, which is from the fact-checking organization COFACT from Taipei. So from Africa, we move to Asia. Billion, the floor is yours.
Hi, Bob. Can you hear me? Yes, you do?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Billion Lee, and I'm from Taipei, Taiwan. I'm Taiwanese. And as for coronavirus, I need to say, because in Taiwan, also, we do speak similar language as Mandarin. in Taiwan, the native speaker is Taiwanese, but also we do speak Mandarin. So that means we can understand every characters from China. So actually, during the China, the first fact inside Wuhan, actually, even in December, Taiwan has noticed these cases. Also, from December, the Taiwan system has already all running about how
Billion,
yes?
sorry for the interruption. Can you turn your camera on?
My camera? My camera?
Yes, please turn it on.
I do, or I could share my screen. Let's see. Let me try.
Okay.
Like this. Was that possible? Okay. Yes. So during that time, can you look? Okay.
Yes, now we can
Okay.
see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
So during the cases, even in December, Taiwan has noticed that what happened in China, and also from January, actually for the from Christmas to New Year, and Taiwan has already observed really a lot suspicious information from China, and most of them are about that coronavirus. So actually, I suppose I need to share my screen to this like this. So actually, this is a fake video in YouTube. Can you see this? Yes, that's a roof with a lot of bats. And also, as you know, the first case is from China. That's that because someone has have the bat soup in China, and that is what happened in China. So that's why there's a disease and so the pneumonia in China, and also in now outbreak in around the world. But actually, you can easily observe this fake news is from, actually, it's in Miami, in Florida, when people are going to fix their roof. And also, this kind of information has disseminated into Chinese content farm, also Taiwanese content farm, also in around Facebook. And in Taiwan, what COFAX do is to make a fact-checking chatbot. We are from CBT community, so that means we make it all open source. When users has forwarded this information to this chatbot, the chatbot will then our database is collect some reply, also the counter narrative to the disinformation. Also, all the editors for make fact checkers, we can all log into the website and to help fact checking this disinformation. After that, while another users have also received this kind of disinformation, they can really easily to receive the fact checking reply, fact checking report. Maybe with only one click. So we make it on our social platform in Taiwan. Over 90% people use Line. Line is a Japanese Korean company based in Tokyo in Japan. And it's quite popular in Taiwan. So that is why we use this kind of social platform as our chatbot platform. Also, we do collect some data from the users. We do collect what is the most popular disinformation. So you can easily observe inside this that we connect to Google and analytics, and also that's it's all around really complicated around the world. The elders is what's the most dangerous people about coronavirus in Italy. That's that in Italy that put, and we connect to Google Translation. So that means we can easily to translate all the data inside English. Thus, the elders is quite high risky into Italy because that put arrest all the people over 65 years old, and that is really cruel. But actually, it's all fake because it's the online video from Azerbaijan Bad Bunny from the Maiden TV. And we do collect this kind of things information day after day. And also, even currently now, we have already collect over 3,000 different disinformation about coronavirus. Some from English, some from Japanese, some from Mandarin. And also, we do still put this all for that open source because we understand there is only thing we need to help each other, just like international fact-checking network. So we try to make it all transparent, and we can see we put all the toolkit to teach some other partners how to launch a chatbot to do fact checking. So for example, in Thailand has already duplicated our source code and make their own fact checking chatbot, just like CoFact. So it's a easily observing and also easily sharing about what Taiwan can do. For example, in Taiwan today, we don't have any lockdown. That means we can really freely to get on the street, or students still get to their schools and people get to work. For example, I got work and I just came back from my working place. And also because in Taiwan, people are connected together. And for example, COVAX has been recommended by Taiwan CDC again and again to tell people, to instruct senior people, to instruct general public, they can use COVAX as their fact-checking tool to a really basic, a really first step to do the fact-checking part, because people are just really worried about what they could do, especially when they feel this kind of disease, when they feel harmful, when they feel nervous about what's happening on the world. The currently what all over the world, what is happening is just like maybe two months ago when Taiwan found there is some outbreak in China, and because we are all Asian countries, so it's quite clear that it's a really near distance. So during that time, in Taiwan, the fact checkers, we don't have any rest in our Lunar New Year. We don't have any rest in our holiday because of coronavirus. So I would like to share this kind of thing. It's an open source and it's all transparent. I believe we could share and we could help each other. That is what the network is and what it's mixing up for. That means we can share our ideas and share what we could do for each other. For example, in Taiwan, we do already collect over thousands of this information, and it's easily to translate it into English. I hope this kind of data can be used for everyone. And feel free to contact me if you need any fact-checking toolkit, if you need some software helping, and also some discussion how this fact-checking chatbot work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Billion. You have actually kept the time limits, but also your work is really impressive. And now we will conclude this round of speakers, having with us Christina Tardagilas, actually the umbrella organization from International Fact-Checking group that actually is the organization that leads the way. Christina, thank you very much for being with us today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being around. Thanks for the invitation. It's been a pleasure to hear you all. I think I'm just going to jump in and share my screen, and we can talk a little bit about what's going on in the IFCN. I hope you can see the screen. Can you? Yeah. Okay. So, okay, wait, let me just close you all. Okay. So the IFCN has been working together as a group. The IFCN is the network of fact checkers around the world. We are now more than 80 organizations in more than 40 countries. And in January, we realized that coronavirus was probably going to be a big hit in disinformation. And we decided to launch a alliance, the Coronavirus Facts Alliance, which is mainly applying to health everything that we already knew about, how everything that we used to do when we had UN assemblies or we had G20 meetings and those things. So these are a few numbers. Let me just, okay, these are the numbers that we have from the Alliance right now. So we started in January 24, and in the first column, you see the number of fact checks that we are gathering. This means that every fact checker, every fact checking organization, every time they publish something, they share that URL in the database, in a Google Sheet that is that can be accessed by anyone in the Alliance. So in 4 days, we had 20. In 6 days, we had 86, and now we have over 3,500 fact checks available. And we are only collecting fact checks that result misleading. We are not adding to the database anything that is considered true. And this means that we have also improved the number of members in the Alliance. Many of you in this call are in the Alliance, so thank you very much for your work. You've been amazing. And now we are more than 107 fact checkers. We are actually watching this information in 74 countries. And the fact checks that we have in the database that looks just like this, I hope you can get a better visualization by catching the link that I have written there in black. But in the database, you can find up to 3,500 hoaxes, and they are in 43 languages. So this means this database is like by far the biggest database you can have about what's going on in this misinformation universe. And every week, the IFCN tries to write a report on what's trending and what we have seen. And I want to just share a little bit to compile all you have said a little for the last minutes. So the first wave that we saw in the Alliance was the wave regarding conspiracy theories and false origins for the virus. So we have so many things about how the vaccine or the patent already existed, how the bats were, or the bats or the bananas or anything else was reported, the reason of the virus. And then we had all the craziness around Bill Gates that seems like it's popping up again, and how like the Chinese biological weapon story is also popping up again. But this was like very first in the beginning of the Alliance by January and February. And then we switched to very heavily edited videos about falling people, like people you've probably seen on screen. And you had the nurses that were supposedly from Wuhan, and that kind of very heavily edited content that we had to struggle with. And also the spread of the virus was a big topic among the hoaxes that we have fact checked. There are so many numbers around there, and here I have to make a quick comment. We have always to remember that all the numbers are very dangerous right now. They are only 3 months old. The best of it's 3 months old, and being 1 month from China. So every time a fact checker uses data, it should be very careful about that. Here, then we switched to these the two first boxes here, the fake preventative measures and the false cures. It was a third wave that we identified among the Alliance. And this is actually the wave that we have not been able to kill, because at least from the IFCN's point of view, we have managed to kill like the bat hoaxes, the Bill Gates hoaxes, and some of those edited videos, but we are not being very lucky to debunk false cures and preventative measures. And we are also struggling with new vaccine here and there. So I started to call those as zombie falsehoods, that they are being around for more than 2 months now. And here, what we also have seen in the database is some craziness around how China is trying to exterminate people, how China is trying to seek authorizations to kill infected people, and also some supremacist thoughts about races and religions. I think in Africa was big, the idea of the black blood not being able to be infected, and also in Muslim countries, we saw a hoax that was very, very big, say that you should convert into the Islam so you would be protected. And right now, what we're seeing is a bunch of disinformation regarding testings and lockdowns. And actually, what is about to open, right? There's this new moment of the quarantine, what's going on in the quarantine. And just to wrap up, so these are the lessons that the Alliance has learned so far. First, falsehoods have no barriers at all. So it doesn't matter, the language doesn't matter where you are, it is popping up here and there and very, very fast. We can work together and we can work connected. It's been an amazing experience. And I really want to thank again all the members of the Alliance for being so available. And we are now the biggest newsroom dealing with hoaxes in the planet. So we are, as I said, more than 100 fact checkers, and we are working in 16 different time zones. So really, we are not even sleeping, but this way we can be faster and we can contribute it with each other. So we are actually giving an example to the media industry, in my opinion. But what is actually the barriers that we still face? First, we have very bad data. The data is still changing and moving. So I would recommend fact checkers and journalists and to be very careful about writing about profiles of people that can get infected, profiles of people that are dying, because we know data is not being very well collected in some part of the world, and the database is so brand new. Another barrier is that, of course, fact checkers are super tired and they're being, as Clara said, harassed in some countries. So we really need to protect the work that fact checkers have been doing. So I would ask you if you could please just show your support to the fact checkers in your country. It would be amazing. And of course, the platforms have been doing a little bit. The IFCN is connected, very heavily connected to as many platforms as you can think of. We have received $2 million from Facebook and WhatsApp. We are talking with Google and YouTube. We are talking with TikTok. So let's see what else is coming up, but there's always room for them to help more. And what is really, really important is the confirmation bias that is out there. But for the first time, it seems it has a different trend. It's not connected to your political beliefs mainly, but actually, I think falsehoods are traveling with the help of those who are willing to protect the family and your loved ones. So it's a different kind of bias. So we need to be very, very careful on that. So yeah, here's my contact if you need any help. So let me just stop my sharing.
Christina, thank you very much. I will just add another barrier, which is actually the amount of the information that you have to fact check. I'm following closely the work of Ελληνικά Hoaxes, which is a Greek fact-checking organization, part of IFCN. And my belief is actually that that fact-checking organizations have to respond to an incredible amount of work that needs to be fact-checked. And I think that all of you highlighted this aspect. Just before we take some questions from the audience, I would like to open up the space. We don't have that much time because we have overrun the available time, but just we can take one or two questions. I will start with the first question that is for all of you. You provided a great overview of disinformation narratives and counter narratives. What about the people? Do you notice a change in the way that people get and process the information from the beginning of the crisis and up until now? Who wants to answer this
I think I
question?
can answer that because it's probably like internationally speaking. There is no doubt that fact checkers have managed to get some success in their work and to spread the word about fact checking, right? So I could easily tell you again how we as an organization and as from the Alliance perspective, we have managed to actually kill some hoaxes. And besides that, I think the word fact checking or fact checkers is much more popular now because of the COVID. So COVID actually gave fact checkers a lot of work, but also a lot of exposure. And we are much better now than before in terms of support from the platforms, connection between us, and also the support from general public.
another question, Christina, because it's addressed to you from Maria Trulu. Are there any findings giving insight into the demographics and socio-cultural characteristics of the most popular fake news conspiracy theories that circulated? Secondly, what if you know the profiles of the audience in each country that actually could say circulate this kind of fake news?
So sorry to answer again. Well, what we're doing now, the Alliance is next week, we are going to open a call for academics to answer those kind of questions. And because you can obviously imagine that fact checkers cannot deal with debunks, distributing the debunks and also studying its impacts and its reach. So next week, we are going to get academics to join the Alliance and get all those questions answered for you. So please stay tuned.
Thank you. The other question is to Dr. Karin. I mean, Europeans don't hear that much about coronavirus in Africa. In your opinion, why is this happening, Dr. Karin?
Sorry, I'm sort of in darkness a bit because we've had a power outage. But I think it depends on where we are getting our stories from, or the sources that the European continent is getting their stories from. Because you realize that depending on where and what you subscribe to, that will be your source of information. So you find that depending on where you are getting your information, you may not be able to get stories from the African continent or what is happening in the African continent. Or it might be that there's so much happening in Europe or so much happening in the global north, such that what is happening in the global south isn't as important. And then I think it's from a long history where you find that the African continent always lags behind in everything. By the time there's information coming in, we are way behind. And two, that in most of the times, unless something has a direct impact in the global north or in Europe, then you'll find that from an African perspective, you may not have as many stories being told in Europe. Then the last one is that there are certain narratives about Africa that we are used to, and if that is not what is happening in Africa, then you find that the coverage may not be the same. A good example that we are used to is about the hunger in Africa, the suffering in Africa. So when that is not the case, then you find there's not as much news coverage in the global north as much as you would expect. So there are many reasons to why African stories are not as much in the global north currently, because the pandemic has not really hit Africa as hard as it has done in the global north.
Thank you. We have received a question from Facebook, and this is addressed to Chico and Clara as well, and to Anna, and anyone else that might wants to jump in. How do you think that people react in relation with how politicians in their countries main discourse, especially in Brazil, for example? We have seen a different approach from the President Bolsonaro. How can you actually convince people to accept the fact-checking and counteract these falsehoods? Chico, do you want to start first and then move to Clara?
Let's just turn on the microphone. It's a hard question actually to answer, because I don't know how to make people to go. We're trying like everything, but I think a lot of people are very receptive to the fact checks. I mean, I don't have any hard data on that. There's been a scientific research on that, but I believe that most people, they do believe in what we're saying, and do believe that coronavirus is serious. There are some researchers about the COVID-19. Most people are taking it seriously, but still there are some people that are really I don't know. There's this confirmation bias, and this very narrow political view, this belief, and that this is not serious, and that it's really hard to convince these people that, and sometimes it's not like out of malice. Sometimes people really believe that in the things they're saying. So, but I really don't know how to turn around the opinion on these people. And it's like it's our daily struggles, what we're trying like to do every single day. But I guess I cannot offer like a ready-made answer for that. I just don't know how. I believe we're getting there, but I don't know exactly how to change to convince people that this is a serious disease and that these government officials are wrong.
Clara, thank you. To go. Do you want to unmute your microphone? Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a very tough question to answer because I probably think that we need to do much more academic research on it. I would argue that what is happening, at least for Spain, and I think this is a very different situation with Brazil, is the fact that somehow the scientific knowledge is being questioned. What happened in Spain is that the government has been saying that they've been relying on experts since the beginning of the crisis on what to do and what not to do around it. And the fact is that Spain probably should have had a lockdown much before, and we wouldn't have 18,000 deaths today if we had. But the truth is that experts were saying that we didn't need to lock down, that this wasn't such a big crisis. So one of the things that has happened due to that is that people are having kind of a hard time to actually trust scientific information.
Yes, this is very crucial and important. And also, before passing the floor to Jensi and Anna, etc., I would like actually to raise the question that Christina is asking to everyone. Is there anything else that the coronavirus Factalize should be doing? Please share your thoughts, both in the chat room, but also here. I mean, Anna, what do you think? And also Jensi as well.
I mean, I can't comment on the alliance, but I think that one of the main challenges, as it also came up from other speakers' answers, is how to really engage the public. So we all have these events, we all have the webinars, we all have conversations, but usually not only during COVID, but during the year, during the history of fact-checking organizations or organizations like DFR Lab, the main challenge is to engage audiences that don't necessarily go look for the right information or don't necessarily already have the critical thinking to distinguish between false narratives or true information. And I think that some steps from governments have been made during COVID-19. So for example, Italy just established a government task force against fake news, COVID-19 related fake news. So that's like a huge step for a country like Italy, where disinformation and foreign propaganda has been spreading for years without much attention. So I think that as much as all of our organizations can engage with the policymakers and leaders to engage a broader audience, that's probably going to be helpful. But again, I don't want to talk for the alliance.
Yes, thank you, Jensi.
Oh, well, I think IFCN under Christina and Bebars, they're doing a great job. In fact, for the first time, IFCN has shown the power of probably the global network. And, we are very happy to actually work with them so closely. When you say that there are 3,500 plus stories, 100 plus fact-checking outfits, in 75 plus countries, it's a great number because, one thing I think we need to also remember, and I am assuming this is happening across other countries as well. I've seen this happening in the US, that the media landscape is undergoing a massive change. In fact, a lot of media outfits here in India have cut down jobs, have taken out journalists who probably were also working towards informing people about what's happening during the pandemic. So we are actually in quite a difficult situation. In these kind of situation, the fact that the fact checkers are really doing a very important job. In fact, we've not rested over the last 10 weeks. We've been working continuously, and I'm sure that this is how fact checkers around the world are doing it. And that's why it's so important, for something like IFCN to bring together all these fact checking stories together onto one platform and tell the world that maybe whatever language it is, you can come into one single destination and look at these stories, and then probably researchers, I guess, after all this settles down, they would be able to make certain broad trends and also tell platforms about where there are immediate needs. I think the platforms themselves this time have realized all the work that they were doing with fact checkers were not something which will ever go in waste. In fact, a lot of media organizations here in India have approached us and have asked us, how do we do fact checking? We've been training them as well in using various other methods and engaging with them on how fact checking has to be done. So it honestly, it's been an humbling experience, and also it's been an experience where we've learned that the kind of work that we were doing over the last 3 years, this is the time when it has all come together to tell people that fact checking is there to stay for a very long time.
Thank you. I will just keep getting questions. This is something that I will just mention a question from Clementine Diacomanoli, that is from the European Union Representation Officer, that she's actually would like to ask Aaron, do you think that is there any more global way to address this kind of disinformation, at least on that level? European Union have launched a similar initiative, so could you respond to that?
Sure. I do think that the fact-checking organizations are more aligned and working in partnership than any time before. So I do think we actually, through the work that the IFCN and Pointer are doing, in many ways, I think we are addressing this at a global level. In addition, many of the fact-checking organizations are working together through our partnership with Facebook, that we are spotting many same and similar claims, and we are relying on each other every day. What I can tell you is that there is an email thread this morning among fact checkers talking about stories in the United States suggesting that the genesis, the start of the coronavirus may have come from a facility, a medical facility in China. And we're talking about that. So I think those things are happening behind the scenes. Maybe we can be more transparent. I always think we can get better, but I think when it comes to misinformation, because the themes are so similar, organization and partnership is very important. And I think we're doing a lot. And of course we could do more. But yeah, we're trying.
Just to sum up, we have another question from Evgenia that addressed to everyone. She actually suggests that she has the feeling that trustworthy scientific information still remains within the academic scientific environment. Do you think that this kind of knowledge should be made more accessible while in the fact-checking process?
I'll speak just very quickly. I think fact-checking is trying to make scientific information accessible and understandable. If you're not a scientist, most of the material that scientists produce is hard to understand and read. And I think our job as fact checkers is to take that material and make it understandable for everyone. I think what Clara showed during her presentation is excellent, because it goes even beyond trying to take the words of a scientist and make them into words we understand, but through the use of graphics or art or video, how can we communicate messages in a simple and understandable way? Very important in what we do. The second question there is, how do we do it in a way that is trustworthy, right? So how do they trust us as journalists to convey that information? Because we're not all of us anyway, are medical doctors or have PhDs.
Thank you. I just want to close this session with a mention of what Thanos Itistas is suggesting from Ellinika Hoax, is that maybe all signatories should discuss and agree on a common plan to tackle this, or at least ameliorate it under IFC auspices. And also, Billion Lee suggests that there might be more people or journalists that could help if they understand they could also do something for the Alliance. Saying that, I would like to thank everyone, especially starting from our speakers, that they shared their time with us, their experiences. We have seen it as a webinar in order to address the specialized and general public, and we thank you very much for being here with us in order to make your work more visible, and we are more than happy to share our platform in order to do so. I would like to thank also World Learning and Vladimir Spencer that contributed a lot in order to realize this workshop, and also the State Department Citizens Exchange Office that supports the digital communication network. But above all, I would like to thank you everyone for being today here with us. Just to give you because something has been mentioned in the discussion, I would like to inform you that on Tuesday at 5 o'clock Greek time, we will have a discussion about COVID-19 mediation through messaging. It will be with actually Professor Dan Ruth, which is specialized in public health communication. And also on Wednesday, on April 22, we will have a follow-up event of this one regarding undemocracy and disinformation, where we will discuss the issue of media literacy. Please have in mind that this roundtable was a part of the ones that will follow, and we would be more than happy to have you again on May after, we hope, after the coronavirus, in order to discuss the day after. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here with us.